In the vast expanse of the Milky Way, where countless civilizations had risen and fallen, where empires spanned entire galactic arms, and where the very fabric of space-time was routinely bent to the whims of faster-than-light travel, there existed a problem so pervasive, so seemingly insurmountable, that it threatened to unravel the delicate tapestry of intergalactic cooperation. Nobody could understand what anyone else was saying. Oh sure, there were translation matrices, universal translator devices, and even the occasional psychic cephalopod who claimed to speak all languages, though most species agreed that the cephalopods were probably just messing with everyone. But true, seamless communication between the myriad species of the galaxy remained frustratingly out of reach. Enter the Galactic Linguistic Council, a body of the most learned scholars from 100 different worlds, all dedicated to the lofty goal of universal understanding. And at the heart of this august institution sat Zixnorp, head of the Xenolinguistic Research Division and widely regarded as the most eloquent being in 7 sectors. On this particular rotation of the galaxy, Zixnorp found himself in his office aboard the massive space station that housed the council. The room was a testament to organized chaos, with holographic displays flickering with alien alphabets, shelves groaning under the weight of linguistic tomes from 1,000 worlds, and a large tank in the corner that housed his assistant, a young bloop named Glorp. Zixnorp adjusted his tentacle spectacles for the umpteenth time, his 3 eyes blinking in rapid succession as he stared at the holographic display before him. The data scrolling across the screen was enough to make even his highly evolved brain throb with confusion. "This can't be right," he muttered, his voice a mix of clicks and whistles. "It simply can't be." Glorp oozed closer, curiosity evident in the ripples of his gelatinous form. "What seems to be the problem, most eloquent one?" Zixnorp's eye stalk swiveled towards Glorp, narrowing in disbelief. According to these reports, a human diplomat has learned 50-50 alien languages in just 1 standard galactic week. Glorp's body jiggled in what passed for laughter among the bloops. "Surely you jest, most eloquent one. Even the great polyglots of Verbos Prime take at least a cycle to master a single new tongue." "I wish I were jesting," young Glorp Zixnorp sighed, his tentacles drooping dramatically. "But the data doesn't lie. This human, designation Alexandra Starling, has apparently become fluent in everything from Zargaxian to Qulthar in less time than it takes most species to learn how to say hello in binary." Glorp's gelatinous form rippled with skepticism. "Perhaps there's been some sort of mistake, a glitch in the translation matrix, perhaps." Zixnorp shook his head, all 3 of his eye stalks wobbling in concert. "I've triple-checked the data myself. It's been verified by independent sources on multiple worlds. This human, this Alexandra Starling, she's real, and she's coming here. Today." As if on cue, a chime sounded, indicating an incoming transmission. Zixnorp's tentacles danced over the holographic controls, and a new image flickered to life in the center of the room. It was a human face, unremarkable by their species standards, save for the intensity of the eyes and the slight quirk of the lips that hinted at barely contained amusement. "Greetings, esteemed Zixnorp," the human said, her voice somehow managing to convey both respect and irreverence. "Alexandra Starling here. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Zixnorp, momentarily flustered, tried to regain his composure. "Ah, Ms. Starling, we've been eagerly awaiting your arrival. I trust your journey to our station has been uneventful." Alexandra's grin widened. "Oh, it's been anything but uneventful. I spent the trip brushing up on my crystalline harmonics. Did you know they have 16 different tonal variations just for expressing degrees of politeness? Fascinating stuff." Zixnorp's tentacles twisted in confusion. Crystalline harmonics, but that wasn't on the list of languages you had reportedly mastered. "Oh, that old thing," Alexandra waved dismissively. "That was from 2 days ago. I've picked up a few more since then. Anyway, I've just docked. See you in a few ticks." The transmission cut off, leaving Zixnorp and Glorp staring at each other in stunned silence. "Most eloquent one," Glorp burbled nervously, "I have a feeling our lives are about to become significantly more interesting." Zixnorp could only nod in mute agreement. The Galactic Linguistic Council chamber was a marvel of xeno-architecture, designed to accommodate beings of all shapes, sizes, and atmospheric requirements. Gravity plates allowed creatures from high-G worlds to move comfortably alongside those accustomed to near-zero gravity. Atmospheric bubbles ensured that methane breathers could converse with oxygen-dependent life forms without the risk of spontaneous combustion, a lesson learned the hard way after the infamous flatulent diplomatic incident of Cycle 2876. As Zix, Norp, and Glorp made their way to their seats, the chamber buzzed with a cacophony of alien languages, each more incomprehensible than the last. But it wasn't the usual bureaucratic babble that had the gathered xenolinguists on edge. News of the human prodigy had spread, and speculation ran rampant. I heard she learned quantum entanglish by having herself scattered across 11 dimensions, whispered a Vorkax diplomat, its methane exhalations forming complex fractal patterns. Nonsense, replied a silicon-based entity from Rigel VII. Everyone knows humans can't survive quantum dispersal. I bet she just has some sort of neural implant. You're both wrong, chimed in a creature that appeared to be nothing more than a sentient cloud of ionized gas. The humans have obviously developed some sort of time dilation technology. They're probably spending subjective years studying while only days pass for the rest of us. The debate might have continued indefinitely if not for the sudden hush that fell over the chamber as the doors swished open, revealing a slender figure that could only be human. Alexandra Starling strode in, her confident gait and mischievous grin a stark contrast to the bewildered aliens around her. She was dressed in what appeared to be a standard-issue human diplomatic uniform, but keen-eyed observers might have noticed the subtle incorporation of alien fashion elements, a Zargaxian color-shifting fabric here, a Q-Althar bioluminescent trim there. Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Linguistic Council, she announced, her voice somehow managing to sound like a mixture of laughter and speech. I hope I'm not late. I got a bit caught up learning crystalline harmonics on the way here. Fascinating language, really. Did you know they communicate entirely through resonant frequencies? The chamber erupted into chaos. Tentacles flailed, antennae twitched, and more than a few translator devices sparked and fizzled in confusion. Zixnorp, desperately trying to maintain some semblance of order, cleared his throats, all three of them, and addressed the human. Miss Starling, welcome to the Galactic Linguistic Council. We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival. Alexandra's grin widened. Ah, Zixnorp. Klee Blortneck Fizzlepop, she said, perfectly mimicking the complex XX-Lorbian greeting. Or would you prefer squish squash bloop bleep, she added, switching effortlessly to bloop. Glorp nearly liquefied in shock. How is this possible? Zixnorp stammered, his usually eloquent speech reduced to sputtering clicks. Alexandra shrugged, a maddeningly human gesture. Oh, you know, a little of this, a little of that. Mostly just good old-fashioned human ingenuity. And coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. A Q-Althar diplomat, resembling nothing so much as a sentient cactus, spoke up. Its voice was a series of sharp staccato bursts. But our language is based on spore dispersal patterns. It took our linguists decades to develop a translation matrix. Oh, that, Alexandra waved dismissively. I figured that out during my lunch break yesterday. Your conditional tenses are expressed through the density of spores, right? Fascinating stuff. Though I have to say, your subjunctive mood gave me a bit of trouble. Who knew the difference between might have been and could potentially become could hinge on a 0.003% variance in spore concentration? The Q-Althar's needles drooped in defeat, though a keen observer might have noticed a slight quiver of excitement running through its branches. Zixnorp, desperately trying to maintain some semblance of scientific decorum, cleared his throats again. Yes, Miss Starling, while your achievements are undoubtedly impressive, surely you understand our skepticism. No known species has ever demonstrated such rapid linguistic acquisition. We must insist on a thorough examination to verify your claims. Alexandra's eyes twinkled with mischief. Of course. I'd be happy to demonstrate. How about we start with, oh, I don't know. Void speak. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Void speak, the language of the enigmatic null entities, was considered the most challenging form of communication in the known universe. Most species couldn't even perceive it, let alone understand it. Impossible, Zixnorp whispered. Void speak requires a fundamental restructuring of one's perception of reality. It's not just a language, it's an entirely different way of existing. But Alexandra was already moving. Her body seemed to shimmer, becoming translucent at the edges. The air around her darkened, tiny motes of anti-light swirling in complex patterns. And then, impossibly, she began to unspeak. It wasn't sound. It wasn't even the absence of sound. It was something that made sound itself seem quaint and limited. Ideas and concepts that had no business existing in three-dimensional space unfurled in the minds of every being present. In that moment, the assembled xenolinguists experienced the taste of the color blue which, surprisingly, was not at all what one might expect. The sound of a geometric proof resolving itself, the texture of quantum uncertainty, the scent of a star being born. And, perhaps most disturbingly, the profound emotional impact of a joke that could only be understood by beings with seven-dimensional sensory apparatus. When it was over, Alexandra solidified, looking only slightly winded. So she said, grinning at the slack-jawed or equivalent aliens around her, "Did I pass?" The chamber erupted into a frenzy of excited chatter, with various species attempting to process what they had just experienced. Some of the more sensitive telepathic races were still reeling, their synaptic patterns fundamentally altered by exposure to void speak. Zixnorp's tentacles were tied in knots literally. He had to take a moment to unknot himself before he could speak. But how he managed to croak. Alexandra's expression softened slightly. "Look, I get it. This must all seem pretty wild to you guys. But here's the thing about us humans, we're adaptable, we're curious, and most importantly, we're really good at pattern recognition." She began pacing the chamber, her voice taking on a more professorial tone. "When we first joined the galactic community, we were overwhelmed by the sheer diversity of communication methods. But then we realized something at their core: all languages are just patterns, whether it's arranging sounds or dispersing spores or manipulating quantum states. It's all about conveying meaning through structured patterns. Once we figured that out, it was just a matter of developing the right learning techniques. We created neural interfaces that could rapidly map alien linguistic structures onto our existing language centers. We developed mnemonic systems that could compress years of study into days. And yes, we drank truly heroic amounts of caffeine." The aliens listened, enraptured. Even Glorp had stopped his incessant jiggling. "But here's the real kicker," Alexandra continued, her eyes gleaming. "We didn't just learn your languages, we started seeing connections between them. Patterns within patterns. We realized that the Zargaxian click language shared structural similarities with crystalline harmonics, that the pheromone-based communication of the hive minds of Sector 7 had parallels with the quantum entanglement chatter of the void entities." She spread her arms wide. "Don't you see? We're not just learning individual languages, we're uncovering the fundamental principles of communication itself." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, tentatively, Zixnorp began to laugh. It started as a low rumble, building to a full-blown tentacle-slapping guffaw. "By the great Babel," he wheezed, "you humans are absolutely insane." "Brilliant, but insane." Alexandra bowed theatrically. "We'll take that as a compliment." Glorp, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burbled excitedly. "Most eloquent one. I've just had a thought. If the humans can learn our languages so quickly, then they could potentially serve as universal translators." Zixnorp finished, his eyes widening in realization. Alexandra snapped her fingers and pointed at them. "Now you're getting it. In fact, that's kind of why I'm here. Humanity would like to propose the formation of an Intergalactic Translation Corps." The chamber erupted into excited chatter once more, but this time with an undercurrent of hope and anticipation. Zixnorp raised a tentacle for silence. "Ms. Starling, while your proposal is intriguing, I must ask what's in it for humanity. Surely you don't expect us to believe you're doing this out of sheer altruism." Alexandra's grin turned slightly sheepish. "Well, you got us there. The truth is, we're hoping this will help smooth over some of our, let's call them cultural misunderstandings with the wider galactic community." Glorp rippled questioningly. "Misunderstandings? Well," Alexandra said, ticking off points on her fingers, "there was the incident with the Arcturian ambassador and the whoopee cushion. The unfortunate mistranslation that led to the G. Lorbnak incident. Oh, and let's not forget the time we accidentally declared war on the hive minds because someone mixed up the words for greetings and your queen smells of fermented algae." Zixnorp winced at each recollection. "Ah, yes, those incidents. I see your point." "Plus," Alexandra added, her tone turning serious, We genuinely believe this could be a game-changer for galactic civilization. Think about it true, instantaneous communication between all sapient species. No more misunderstandings. No more translation errors leading to diplomatic crises. We could enter a new era of cooperation and understanding. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It was Glorp who broke the silence, his gelatinous form quivering with excitement. Most eloquent one, I believe the human speaks wisdom. This could revolutionize not just linguistics, but every field of galactic society. Zix-Norp nodded slowly, his initial skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. I'm inclined to agree, young Glorp. Ms. Starling, on behalf of the Galactic Linguistic Council, I formally request a detailed proposal for this Intergalactic Translation Corps. Alexandra's face lit up. Excellent. I've actually got a preliminary outline right here. It's in quantum braille. Hope that's okay. She pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display of shifting, multidimensional patterns. As the council members gathered around to examine the proposal, Alexandra couldn't help but add, "Oh, and fair warning, the coffee consumption requirements for our translators are going to be astronomical. You might want to start terraforming a coffee planet now." Zix-Norp's tentacles curled in amusement. I suppose we'll have to add caffeine addiction to the list of bizarre human traits we need to accommodate. Trust me, Alexandra said with a wink, it'll be worth it. Now who's up for a crash course in human idioms 101? Fair warning, it's going to be a wild ride. But hey, when in Rome, right? The blank stares she received in response only made her grin wider. Oh yeah, we've got our work cut out for us. Buckle up, Buttercup. And so began a new chapter in galactic history, one where the absurd linguistic talents of humanity would either usher in an unprecedented era of intergalactic harmony, or plunge the universe into caffeine-fueled chaos. Knowing humans, it would probably be a bit of both. 6 standard galactic months later, the newly christened Babel Station hung in space, like a gleaming Babel fish, its design a whimsical nod to the Earth novel that had, ironically, predicted humanity's role as galactic translators. The station was a marvel of xenoengineering, with sections that could reconfigure themselves to accommodate the physiological needs of any known sentient species. Inside, the station buzzed with activity as beings from across the cosmos came together in a symphony of interspecies communication. The central atrium, a vast space that seemed to defy the laws of physics, was filled with a dizzying array of life forms, all engaged in animated conversation. Alexandra Starling, now officially titled Chief Linguistic Chaos Coordinator, a job title she had insisted on, stood on a floating platform overlooking the atrium. She surveyed the organized mayhem with a mixture of pride and amusement, sipping from a mug of what the station's inhabitants had come to recognize as the human's life-giving elixir coffee. To her left, a team of human linguists was engaged in an animated discussion with a group of crystalline entities. The humans' hands moved in complex patterns that somehow translated their words into resonant frequencies, causing the crystalline bodies of their conversational partners to shimmer and chime in response. To her right, a holographic projection showed a human diplomat smoothly mediating a trade dispute between the methane-breathing Vorkax and the silicon-based Exthalians. The humans switched effortlessly between gaseous expulsions and lattice vibrations, managing to convey complex legal concepts in both languages simultaneously. And in the center of it all stood Zix-Norp and Glorp, the unlikely duo now serving as the station's head of research and chief of operations, respectively. They made their way through the crowd towards Alexandra's platform, navigating around a group of null entities who were engaged in what appeared to be a heated game of multidimensional chess. "Ah, there you are," Alexandra called out as they approached. She tapped a control on her wrist device, and the platform descended to meet them. "How goes the Universal Translator project?" Zix-Norp's tentacles waved in a gesture that conveyed both excitement and frustration. "Progress is occurring," he said diplomatically. "We've managed to integrate the human linguistic algorithms into our existing translation matrices, but there are still some unexpected results." Glorp jiggled in what might have been a nod. "Just this morning, we had an incident where the translator rendered a Zargaxian lullaby into Q-Ulthar as what can only be described as an extremely lewd limerick." Alexandra winced. "Ouch. Well, nobody said this would be easy. At least it wasn't another diplomatic incident, right?" "Fortunately not," Zix-Norp agreed. The Kia-Althar representative found it quite amusing, actually. Said it gave them some interesting ideas for pollination season. See? Silver linings, Alexandra grinned. Now, what's this I hear about a breakthrough in the xenobiology department? Glob's gelatinous form rippled with excitement. Oh, it's extraordinary. The human researchers have developed a method of using linguistic patterns to decode alien genetic structures. They're calling it DNA linguistics. Alexandra's eyebrows shot up. Really? That's incredible. How does it work? Zixnorp cleared his throats, all three of them, and launched into an explanation. Well, you see, they've discovered that the way genetic information is encoded in various species bears a striking resemblance to the syntactical structures of their languages. By applying human linguistic analysis techniques to genetic sequences, they've been able to identify previously unknown genes and even predict evolutionary pathways. Fascinating, Alexandra mused. You know, this reminds me of an old Earth theory called the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the idea that the structure of a language influences the way its speakers conceptualize the world. Looks like it might apply on a biological level too. Their discussion was interrupted by a sudden commotion near the center of the atrium. A group of void entities had materialized, or perhaps they had always been there, and had only now chosen to be perceived, their presence causing nearby beings to stumble as local space-time fluctuated. Oh, Alexandra muttered. Looks like our non-Euclidean friends are getting rowdy again. I'd better go smooth things over before someone accidentally gets folded into the 11th dimension. She hopped off the platform and made her way towards the disturbance, her voice shifting into the impossible non-sounds of void speak as she approached. Zixnorp and Glorp watched her go, a mixture of awe and bemusement on their alien faces. I must admit, Zixnorp said, his tentacles curled in a gesture of contentment. When she first proposed this madness, I had my doubts. But seeing it in action, it's nothing short of miraculous. Glorp jiggled in agreement. Indeed. Most eloquent one. The human's ability to bridge linguistic gaps has led to breakthroughs in fields we never even considered. Did you hear about the joint Cool-Thur-Zargaxian research project? They're developing a new form of faster-than-light communication based on spore-powered quantum entanglement. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a harried-looking blue persistent, several steaming mugs of coffee somehow balanced on its amorphous form. Your hourly caffeine infusion, sirs, it burbled. Zixnorp accepted a mug with a grateful tentacle. He had initially been skeptical of the human beverage, but had to admit it did wonders for keeping all three of his brains firing on all synapses. Thank you, young bloop. Tell me, how are you finding your work here on Babel Station? The bloop rippled in a way that suggested both excitement and exhaustion. It's intense, sir. The humans are incredible, but keeping up with them is a challenge. Just yesterday, one of them asked me to translate a joke into 17 different languages simultaneously. I'm still not sure I got the punchline right in hexapodian click whistle. Glorp patted the young bloop consolingly with a pseudopod. There, you're doing fine. Remember, even the humans don't get it right all the time. As if to prove his point, a loud explosion suddenly rocked the station, followed by the wail of alarm klaxons. Alexandra's voice came over the intercom, sounding slightly singed but still cheerful. Attention all beings. Minor technical difficulty in Sector 7. Turns out you can't actually translate antimatter into matter, no matter how good your grammar is. Oops. Cleanup crews to Sector 7, please. And can someone bring me another coffee? This might take a while. Zixnorp and Glorp exchanged a look that somehow conveyed both exasperation and fondness. Humans, Zixnorp sighed. Humans, Glorp agreed. And as they made their way towards Sector 7 to assist with the cleanup, both aliens found themselves reflecting on how much their lives had changed since the arrival of Alexandra Starling and her fellow human linguists. The galaxy was noisier now, certainly, more chaotic, undoubtedly, but it was also more vibrant, more connected, and infinitely more interesting. Ideas flowed freely across species boundaries, cultural exchanges happened at a dizzying pace, and the age-old dream of true universal communication seemed, for the first time, within reach. There would be challenges ahead, of course, misunderstandings to smooth over, cultural sensitivities to navigate, and probably more than a few accidental declarations of war to undo. But as Zixnorp looked around at the thriving ecosystem of intergalactic cooperation that Babel Station had become, he couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism for the future. And if that future came with a side of coffee and the occasional antimatter explosion, well, that was a small price to pay for progress. As they reached Sector 7, they found Alexandra already there, her hair slightly singed, but her grin as irrepressible as ever. She was simultaneously directing cleanup efforts, calming a group of agitated void entities, and sketching out plans for what looked like a new type of universal translator on a floating holographic display. "Ah, there you are," she called out when she spotted them. "Perfect timing. I've just had the most brilliant idea for integrating quantum linguistics into the station's communication systems. It's only got a 30% chance of accidentally creating a sentient black hole this time." Zixnorp felt his tentacles beginning to knot themselves again, but he couldn't quite suppress the surge of excitement he felt. "I assume you have safety protocols in place," he asked, already knowing the answer. Alexandra's grin widened. "Safety protocols? Where's the fun in that? Come on, let's make some linguistic history." And as they plunged into the controlled chaos of human-led scientific advancement, Zixnorp found himself thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, the universe had been waiting for a species as wonderfully, terrifyingly mad as humanity all along. After all, in a cosmos full of impossible languages and incomprehensible beings, who better to bridge the gaps than a species crazy enough to think they could understand it all?